sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a show where two sisters, one of whom is a stand-up comedian, which is me, Virginia Jones, and one of whom is a therapist, which is her, Laura Ryan, talk about whatever we want to talk about. How are you doing?
I'm making it. I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to drooling dynamo, Virginia Jones. And that's not drooling.
And you're making it. The format of the show is one of us prepares a topic that the other one doesn't know anything about. One of us gets to be the teacher and one of us just the student sitting at the feet, which I know is a position Laura really likes.
This week, I get to be the smart person. I was actually inspired by our niece. We were talking about stuff that she's doing in school, and it's culinary school. She was talking about an assignment that they had where she had to learn how to basically package and make a frozen meal that could be shipped to someone in another state so that they could eat it and give her a grade. And I just thought that was so cool. And I thought she has so many specialized skills that I don't have. So this episode is about practice makes perfect. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers, and he talks a lot about how to become the best in your career. And I'm really inspired by that. Sometimes Virginia will tell me skills that she's developed that I don't have. And then I have skills that she doesn't have because I've been in this other niche market. We're going to talk about some niche skills for different careers that I learned about that I thought were interesting.
So before we start, and I am very interested, I will say we learned a lot of cool things from our niece about where various foods came from.
Here are some niche skills for different careers that I collected. Stand-up comedy, premise triage, abandoning a clever idea because it's not laugh dense enough. So that's something that your regular people don't know how to do. Callback planting, dropping a detail early that feels throwaway but is actually bait for a later joke. Again, don't have that skill myself. Mouth sound editing. I thought this was interesting. Avoiding consonant clusters that blur punchlines.
Interesting. I think that's something that I've done without thinking about it. If something gets too wordy or too hard to say, it will kill your punchline. The thing that I wish regular people would understand about comedy, especially storytelling, is if it doesn't point to the punchline, it doesn't need to be in the story. On TikToks, people do story times, and it just makes me crazy because they'll break into a story that's about going to the dog park with a side story about something their aunt did that made them crazy. That's not the story. And the longer it gets, the less effective the end is going to be.
And the less likely I'm going to continue to watch it. I cannot tolerate stories that are too long without enough of a lead up. I used to be really annoyed when people would do the little clip at the front of a TikTok where this is going to happen in a few seconds, but you're getting the spoiler now. That used to really bug me, but now at least it lets me know why I'm on this
Why
train.
am I here? Right.
What are we doing?
Just because it's true or it happened or it's your memory doesn't mean that it's relevant.
We don't need to be factually accurate when we're telling a story. Factually accurate is for the textbook.
Some of Laura's super skills in psychotherapy include pattern spotting across long timelines. Therapists notice cycles that other people miss. I have become more attuned to this since talking with my sister about it. And who am I really good about spotting the cycles in? Other people.
Oftentimes it doesn't apply to oneself. This is why I love having a long-term relationship with someone, because I can say,
the thing you're saying about your job now and how it's driving you crazy and you have to get out is exactly what you used to say about your job. Emotion regulation by proxy, helping others calm down while staying regulated. That's a pretty good skill.
It's really hard though. I have some clients that are very emotional and I feel stressed, but I have to appear calm. And I'm not even aware at this point about it. I'll have a headache after the appointment because I'm repressing so much emotion.
Translating messy feelings, taking complex ideas and summarizing them into usable and understandable language. I think that's a great skill. You'll take other people's stories out of it. I'll tell you my version of a story and I'll say, and then she did that because, and you'll say, well, your perception is that she did that because. It could be something completely unrelated. You're making something about you or you're making something about something that happened to you that might not have anything to do with you at all.
In a way, I'm kind of doing the same thing that you're doing with stand-up, where I'm taking a complicated story and I'm funneling it down to its most important parts to share with the person. A lot of times people will tell me stuff and then I'll say, can I summarize that for you? I think a lot of times they get lost in the story. So I hear you saying that this man has harmed you again. And here we are. And they'll say, well, why did I spend 30 minutes telling you that? And I will say, I don't know. Here's some other industries that I'm interested in. I was just curious about what are these special skills that clockmakers develop? Here's some things that clockmakers can do that none of you can do, unless you're a clockmaker. Polishing pivots without changing diameter. Removing microscopic scratches while preserving tolerances within microns. Cleaning something up to the point where you can remove these tiny little microscopic scratches. I don't know how to do that. Do you know how to do that?
I sure don't. I looked at my class ring under a magnifying glass the other day and was horrified to see teeny tiny little bits of stuff in it that I tried to clean out but couldn't because my eyesight isn't good enough.
Maybe you should call a clockmaker. Clockmakers also are able to listen for escapement irregularities, diagnosing faults by rhythm variation like musical ear training, but for gears. I thought that was cool.
The only thing my watchmaker ever does is replace a battery and say it's probably the battery. Unfortunately, the watches that I buy are so cheap. If something's too complicated, the answer is just to throw it away and get another $50 watch.
I had a long convo recently with our family members about how I don't wear a watch because I think it's a tool of patriarchy and white supremacy, and I don't like that.
I wear a watch largely because of comedy, because it's still handy to tell what time it is on stage without looking at my phone. I've continued to be in the habit of wearing one. If you are a person who looks at your phone every 45 seconds, you don't have to.
I just don't like to wear this thing on my body. Something else the clockmakers know how to do is to control oil spread, applying just enough lubricant so capillary action doesn't ruin the movement months later of the device. I just thought that was cool.
I know about capillary action as pertains to fabric. Capillary action is what enables some fabrics to dry quickly because there is a route carved out of the yarns that moves liquid from one area to another.
Okay, that's why it's like blood vessels. That's cool.
I have some specialty skills in my day job in materials. One of them is being able to identify fibers. If I have a magnifying glass and a teasing pin and a lighter, I can identify most fabrics.
A lighter?
Yeah.
Oh, because you can see if it melts or not.
You can see if it melts. Most synthetics will melt and form a plastic bead. Organic cotton, rayon, linen will leave an ash, and the color of ash can tell you. Wool will smell like burning hair.
I learned recently that the microplastics in all of our clothes are really bad for the human body.
Yeah, I actually went to a lecture about that in November. One of the tests that they did was they had soil with microplastics in it, and they put earthworms in 4 different quadrants. One quadrant has no microplastics, one quadrant has a lot. And they found that the earthworms would tend towards the cleaner soil. And also, if there is enough microplastics in the soil, the earthworms in that section would die. This is a point of big concern for me because everything that I've done in my professional career revolves around synthetic fibers. We've started to notice that it may not be that good for us, but it also may not be that good for the planet.
I know somebody who's really concerned about endocrine disruptors. And she was telling me that there was a study done where they put a polyester outfit on an animal. I think it was a goat. And they found that the animals who wore the polyester clothes were not being observed as sexual creatures by their peers. It messes up your hormones and everything else. It's very exciting stuff.
I think that's what happened in the 70s is people were wearing polyester clothing and they just didn't find each other bangable.
That's why they had to do cocaine all the time.
That's right. I have a lot of skills in a very specific kind of math. Basically, it's geometry. I'm good at some algebra, but I'm not good at really complicated math. But arithmetic and geometry, I use every day. So I can calculate the area out of anything at any time for anybody.
In any situation.
If that's useful to you, I can do it. Pilot's micro skills, seeing wind that isn't visible, reading drift from smoke, waves, treetops, and runway mirage. You just get used to how wind looks because you're used to how it affects an airplane. I saw a really cool TikTok yesterday that was a pilot's view of landing.
Yeah, that was really cool.
It's just cloud, 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 runway. Holy crap.
Yeah, it was right away. There was no in between.
Flying by pressure, not instruments. Feeling the pitch and yaw through seat pressure before gauges change. That is interesting.
Your human body is actually affected by these things. You're tuning into this weird stuff that other people don't know how to do.
I have long had a sensitivity to weather. I can sometimes hear the crackle of electricity in the air. That means that there's a storm coming, or I can feel pressure changes. I'm very sensitive to pressure changes. That means it's going to rain, usually. Should I have been a pilot? I don't know. My eyes are not good.
I think that kind of automatically knocks you out of the running. As you know, I enjoy the show Death in Paradise. The thing I love most about it is finding out the special skills that these detectives have developed in their careers. Here's a couple of detective skills that I made note of. Clock checking awareness, noticing when someone mentions time unprompted or over precisely. For example, it was 7:42 p.m. sounds rehearsed. That's a signal to you as a detective that this person may be lying. This one I thought was really cool. Smell as a timestamp. Cigarette smoke, cleaning chemicals, food spoilage, all ages differently. And detectives have to develop a sense of smell about how old something is. This was my favorite. Dust literacy. Knowing when dust is disturbed versus when it's been redistributed intentionally.
Oh.
Right? I have a lot of dust disturbances in my house, but none of them have been intentional.
They're not attached to crimes, but they are attached to someone who is distributing dust in your house.
Exactly.
One thing that I know about humans is that we love patterns. I'm convinced that part of the pleasure of recognizing a celebrity is not that they're a celebrity and you're so excited to be with them, but that your brain is excited that it was right about recognizing something.
I was watching this Ted Danson show, and a woman who was on the show 227 as a side character was one of the characters on this new show. And I thought, I know her.
And that's so pleasurable to look it up on IMDb and confirm where you know them from. You're like, yes. And in my case, it's usually X-Files, Charmed, or Supernatural. From the book Laura mentioned, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, practice isn't the thing you do once you're good, it's the thing you do that makes you good. Once a musician has enough ability to get into a top music school, the thing that distinguishes one performer from another is how hard he or she works. That's it. And what's more, the people at the very top don't work just harder or even much harder than everyone else. They work much, much harder. The most sticky idea from this book, Outliers, is the 10,000 hour rule. It takes 10,000 hours deliberately practicing a thing to become an expert. It's interesting because when I was new in comedy, Eddie Izzard had a quote, it takes about 1,000 gigs to become reasonably good at comedy. And so I was working against that. And a gig is just any time you get on stage. So that's an open mic. It can be a book show. But I've definitely done 1,000 gigs. I suspect that if you count writing and performing, that I have hit 10,000 hours. It is an incredible amount of time. I have this argument with people in comedy about who's talented and who's not talented. My opinion is that talent doesn't matter. If you start comedy and you start working at it, you're going to get better. You can become really, really good. If you are doing it a lot, listening to the feedback the audience is giving you, writing a lot, developing empathy, trying to understand what connects humans, hardly anyone will do comedy for 10,000 hours and not get really good. This doesn't mean you're going to get famous. This doesn't mean you're going to get rich. It means you're going to have a skill.
And you're just going to develop more and more how to do this job. It's just about mastery. In Outliers, the exact quote is, the emerging picture is that 10,000 hours of practice is required to achieve the level of mastery associated with being a world-class expert in anything. And that came from neurologist Daniel Levitin. Malcolm Gladwell says, achievement is talent plus preparation. But before he could become an expert, someone had to give him the opportunity to learn how to be an expert.
It's interesting that we're talking about this today because I just read an article about the death of expertise due to AI. That knowledge is going to be amalgamated with 10 other people and spoon-fed to you in a way that is most palatable. We're leaning towards a future in which there is no expertise and expertise is not valued. Anyone can get a rough idea of what this is if they just scrape the internet.
Also, I'm not going to be able to scrape the internet to find out how to coagulate oil in your watch. Even with AI, there's still certain things that we need to have experts to be able to do.
Glancing off of this lightly, the challenge of AI is it doesn't originate, it doesn't create, it gives you an average. It's not going to create something really. I was talking with someone who works in tech, and he was talking about the prevalence of using ChatGPT in interviews. He's doing most of his interviews online. He says, especially with Gen Z, he can see them looking at something and then 3 guys gave us almost the same response that ChatGPT is feeding them. It doesn't mean they're not going to be good at the job, but it is a little unnerving from the HR perspective, they answered the question correctly so they can continue to be considered for the job.
Which leads me to believe that interviews are stupid and we shouldn't do them.
From the article, It's All in Your Head, How to Achieve Mastery and Improve Performance by Chris Cancialosi. If an individual or team continually addresses a challenge in the same way, they will continue to get the same results. And oftentimes these results are less than desirable. But by disrupting these patterns and understanding alternate ways to approach a problem, we can begin to uncover better methods and better results. Developing these new patterns means creating and strengthening neural pathways in relation to a set of coordinated activities. In other words, you're training your brain to react a certain way through specific, focused activities. The more you perform these activities, the more natural they feel. And if Mr. Gladwell's theory is correct, you're 10,000 hours away from mastery of that specific activity. That quote, although being accurate, is a little general for me. I'm going to tell a story that might be from this Outliers book. There's a guy who has a pottery class. He divides the class into two halves, and he says, half of you guys just need to make 100 pots over the course of this semester. You're going to make 100 pots. The other half, you're going to spend your whole semester making one pot the best you can make it. You're going to really spend all that time perfecting one pot. And the people who made 100 pots, their pots were always better because they had put in the time trying and trying and trying, failing, learning, building. And that's what really makes mastery is repetition.
I recently ordered these prints from Etsy. They showed up and they were terrible. So I had to basically paint them. I have these ink prints in my office that are pages from a dictionary, and it'll have an image on top of it. That's usually done with a really high quality ink. But when I received these pictures that they were done on a copy machine and it was very low on ink, what I did was I made them look interesting and different. My son was looking at it and he said, "Wow, how did you do that on the fly?" And I said, "Because I took about 1,000 art classes. I was planning on being a fine artist when I was in high school and freshman year of college. I have a lot of experience with painting, and that's why I know how to do it now."
There's a lot of skills that you spend time working on them and then you don't for a while. One Halloween, I had a costume that I had ordered, came to find out the week of, we lost this order, so it's not going to be ready by Halloween. And I felt that this was an emergency because my life was at the time a lot simpler and my dad hadn't died right after Halloween yet. It was a big white girl emergency. I realized I went to school for this. I can make my own dress. I don't need someone to do it for me. I have all these micro skills about sewing, pattern cutting, and choosing fabrics and how they go together and how to get them together. Like you, it's kind of automatic. It was something I'd forgotten that I knew how to do.
It's like the Bourne Identity where he looks around and realizes, oh, I know how to break into a bank vault.
I've done it a million times.
That's what I find fascinating about the brain is we develop these skills and you say a lot of things are like riding a bike. A lot of things are a skill set that I've developed and honed and then cast aside, but later need. As Robert Greene wrote in his book, Mastery, the time that leads to mastery is dependent on the intensity of our focus. This is kind of what you're talking about with the pottery. To truly make this work, you have to remain keenly aware of your opportunities for improvement after every practice session. Without intentionally improving each and every time, you may end up working tirelessly only to refine a less than desirable set of patterns.
That is interesting as pertains to comedy. When you work with Maria Bamford, when you're going into a show, she will sometimes ask, what do you want out of this show? What is the thing you are looking for? And the answer is something like, I have a new premise I want to work out, or there's something that's not working about this joke. I want to talk out this story. I do think that that helps you improve faster because you're not just hitting your head against the wall. I'm going to run this set again and again and again and again. You're looking for specific results. And she's very smart about, she's very smart about many things, but she's very smart about the way she does comedy in that it is experimental.
Let's add that to the list of incredible skills that Maria Bamford has. She's a great teacher. To me, that's what an excellent teacher is.
Not just to make this the Maria Bamford show, she's also a great student. When I moved to LA, she was taking improv classes and everybody was so excited that Maria Bamford was there because they're like, what would she have to learn from us? She takes acting lessons. But the answer is that she feels that she can learn something from everyone.
One of the important things that I learned when I first started therapy was that I'm never going to have mastery of this. I'm always going to be learning. I'm always going to be developing new skills. And I'm always going to find out the places where I'm lacking, which I do on a daily basis.
One thing that I really like about people is when they are constantly learning and constantly developing new skills.
Those are the most interesting people, in my opinion.
And I think that it's good for your brain to learn new skills. and not just go, well, this is the way I've always done it. Always be open to the possibility that you're wrong. Always be open to the possibility that there's a better way to do something you're doing.
And always be open to the possibility that there's more to learn. Listening to our niece talk about her culinary school, I want to go to culinary school now just because I want to learn how to do all this cool stuff.
Kind of on the same topic. When I was in art school, one of my art professors said, you have 1,000 bad drawings in your hand and you just have to get them out. And what she meant was repeat, 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 repeat. And that your first maybe month of drawings, you're going to feel frustrated and say, well, these aren't very good. But that's because you have more drawings to get out before you can get to the good ones. And I think that's true about a lot of things. I think you have 100 bad poems, 100 bad songs.
And you have 100 bad therapy appointments. I remember when I was first doing hypnosis, this woman, oh my God, did she humble me? We were in the middle of a hypnosis session. And to be fair, I was incredibly clunky. I think it was my second or third hypnosis appointment ever. She, 10 minutes into the hypnosis, rips the glasses off and says, you are literal garbage at this and you need to quit. And she just walked out. I'm like, she's probably right.
Right. How did you feel about it at the moment? Were you hurt? Were you angry?
I wasn't angry because she was right. I had no business being in a paid appointment with a lady. The way that the hypnosis center trained us, you just literally hit the ground running and figure it out as you go. And I think that was really valuable to me, but it probably wasn't very valuable to the client.
But also, I think you guys were supercuts of hypnosis.
Absolutely. 100%.
I have memories like that. You start doing comedy, you can get pretty good, but you realize you've only been performing for other comics, and other comics are not normal people. And we've talked about that in our previous episodes. Sometimes the first time or the first couple times you perform for non-comics are very hard because the skills you have developed, being gross, telling embarrassing stories about yourself, yelling, may not work in front of normal people.
Gen Pop.
I remember going on a road trip to Klamath Falls, Oregon, where there are no falls. Don't look for them. I was with my good friend, Susan Rice. I did 30 minutes of material I had experienced working, and I just bombed to silence. And my set has always been about things I feel and things that I experience. So it's not just that they don't think I'm funny, it's that they don't care about who I am as a person. And it was very hurtful. I got in the car on the ride home and we talked about this and that. Susan turned to me and she said, you know what I really appreciate about you? And I'm like, oh, she's going to say something nice about my set. If I was with a guy, he would have spent the whole drive just bitching about how bad he did. And you didn't. You just took it like a champ.
That's an important skill. If we're looking at comedy skills, that's an important skill to be able to take it on the chin and keep it moving.
And looking back, I understand why I did badly. At the time, I did not understand. This has always worked. Why isn't this working? And the answer is because I hadn't done it enough.
That was the answer with that woman. I didn't know what I was doing. And she was right. I didn't know what I was doing. But the good news of working for the Supercuts of Hypnosis is I was working from 9 to 8, 5 days a week. I had plenty of hours to really hone my skills and learn how to do this.
That was your Hamburg gigs for the Beatles.
Exactly. I was in the cave or something? What was their place?
The Cavern.
The Cavern, yeah. Positive Changes Hypnosis was my cavern.
A lot of comics, when they get a couple years in, they will start a show because that's their cavern. That's stage time they can reliably get. They're going to have more experienced comics on the show with them, but they know I can get up every week. I can bring new stuff every week. That's the way to get better. This is a quote from How to Level Up at Anything Using Science to Approach Mastery by Jacqueline M. Kory-Westlund. Competence and mastery. Competence is one of our 3 core psychological drives. In this sense, our drive for competence is an orientation toward mastery. We want to level up. We are intrinsically motivated to improve at whatever craft or skill we have chosen to pursue. We want to feel that our actions effectively transform our environment. When we don't have this sense of progression and improvement, we're miserable. Patrick Leoncini, in his book 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, wrote that people cannot be satisfied or fulfilled when they feel they are not respected or known in their job, when they feel their work does not matter, and when they have no clear way to gauge progress in their work. That is a core thing of not just mastery, but competition. It has been incredible to me in adult life, the things that people will pour time into becoming masters of and competing in. Any skill that you can think of, there is a convention, there are tournaments. It can be waving a lightsaber or creating tiny sculptures out of balsa wood. Anything people have ever done, people have tried to become the best at.
I had a friend, he was in his 40s and he became a competitive table tennis player. He moved away and then he was in town for the weekend. I was like, oh, what brings you back to town? And he said, oh, well, I have this table tennis tournament that I'm doing. I thought that was just something you do in the garage after a couple beers.
I am probably the worst table tennis player in the world. I was at a work event where there was a table tennis table and I was invited to play with someone who had some skills. And I said, I'm willing to do it, but I'll tell you right now, I'm not any good. She laughed it off and said, it'll be fine, but it wasn't fine because I wasn't able to return anything. Her game with me was just me missing the ball, picking it up off the floor, saying sorry, serving it, having it returned, missing it, picking it up off the floor and saying sorry over and over again.
But if you did that for 10,000 hours, eventually you would be kind of good at it.
I would be kind of good at it.
Speaking of dormant skills, I remember him saying there was an elderly woman in the competition who was just beating everyone because she had been a competitive player as a child. And then life happens. She was returning from that place and she was killing it in the game.
And it's amazing how it's all still in your body. I have not had time to pursue one of my favorite dumb hobbies, tap dancing, in some time. But anytime I try to do something, it's in there. They say in dance, it takes only 7 perfect executions to internalize it. And I think that that's a lot bigger for other things to really learn it. An interesting thing about competitive dance, and I never got over Lindy hop and swing dancing. The summer
you never got over it? What do you mean?
I'm still interested in it. And I know that the rest of the culture has moved on from the Gap commercial and everything else. An interesting thing that would happen is that dance has a hierarchy. Everybody knows who the great dancers are. Everybody knows who the new dancers are. Being in the scene for a long time, a good thing to do is to dance with the new dancers because they're going to get better. In comedy, a good thing to do is to talk to the new comics and do shows with the new comics because they're going to get better and they're going to start booking stuff.
They will dethrone you very soon.
Also, almost everybody quits. This is the real core of mastery is don't quit. Almost everybody does in almost everything. I was doing an interview with somebody on a podcast and I said, truly, and only with like a little bit of exaggeration, my biggest accomplishment, my biggest achievement in comedy is that I haven't quit. I'm still enjoying it. I practice mastery at it and I still want to get better at it. But out of the people that I started with, almost all of them have quit.
That's very different from the therapy game. Everyone's still in the game.
Well, you spend a lot of money becoming a therapist.
You have to do a lot of education and everything. I remember when I was first starting in the therapy game, I would look to my mentors and I would think, God, how did they get to this place mentally with this client? Because part of your training is you have to go to a supervisor and they will unpack your appointments for the week and tell you where you screwed up. And it turns out it was lots of places and in lots of ways. But I would listen to my mentor and think, God, how did he get there so quick? And the answer is he's been doing this for 50 years. That's how he did it.
And people are not so different as we think that they are. You've told me many times when they're having problems with their marriage, it's because of this. When they're looking to get a divorce, they start dating immediately. You've just seen all these patterns a million times, so you kind of know how it's going to go.
From the same article from Jacqueline Kory-Westlund, you need to know that you're making progress. And to know it, you first need to make progress. One way to do that is through intentional practice. First, you need to practice the activity. Practice does not only mean doing the activity. Practice is different from mere doing. You can do an action 1,000 times or 10,000 times. If you're doing it wrong and not paying attention to what you're doing, if you're repeating mindlessly, then you aren't practicing. Practice involves mindfulness of body and behavior. You attend to how you move, what you do, how you craft, what you add or do and when, and how the world around you reacts and how you interact with the world.
There's a story that Penn Jillette told about street magic. There's a Penn Jillette and teller whose name used to be Raymond Joseph Teller and now has changed his name to just Teller. The end. They take magic very seriously. They take the creation of magic tricks very seriously. They were talking about being in England and watching street magicians. The act was so trite and so
hack, right?
Hack but it was being executed so beautifully because this pair of magicians had done it a million times. The sleight of hand was flawless. The presentation was flawless because they had done it by rote over and over and over again. Now, how much was that person looking at each iteration and saying, how can I improve? Where can I improve? We don't know. But any activity you do again and again and again, you will improve at. I agree that you'll improve faster if you take snapshots of where you are and try to look at where you want to be and what's the shortest distance between those two things.
My version of that would be signing up a new client. For a long time, I just thought, oh, I don't want to do sales. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a therapist. But part of being a therapist is getting someone's buy-in and convincing them that you can help them, really. I was doing pretty well with the first part of just sharing what my skills are, what I'm going to help them with. But I was not doing very well with the second part, which is actually closing the deal. I looked to a lot of people on YouTube and found these different sales techniques. I developed a new schema that seems to work almost every time.
Every artist has this struggle, Laura. Every independent contractor has this moment where they're like, well, I'm not a salesperson. I'm above salespeople. And I don't want to dirty my hands, but sales is a part of everything you do.
Yeah, we're in a capitalist hellscape.
Even if it's not sales, I've had to become good at pitching my ideas to another person. It's a sales meeting. Hey, here's my idea. Here's how I think it'll benefit us. Do you have your buy-in? That's the hard thing about being a sole proprietor is that you have to become good at being a salesperson, records keeper, an accountant. You have to do every little thing. If you're a comic, you have to be a good promoter. My ex-husband was very uncomfortable with my self-promotion. He was like, well, why? If you're really good, people will just find you. And that's not true at all.
No, it's not. It's only true if it's 1802 and nobody has a TV.
Over and over again, rich people become successful because they're not necessarily better, but they just have the money to pour into promotion. Everybody knows their name.
Keith Lee, who was crowned the TikTok US Creator of the Year for his impactful food reviews, when he started doing food reviews, the way that he would break it down was, is the reason for this company's lack of success, is it about the food quality? Is it about the customer service? Or is it about marketing? And almost every time it was marketing, because these people don't have the budgets necessary to promote their business the way that they need to promote it.
It's the end of the year, and that means there's end of the year lists of comics and musicians and best songs and best artwork, best actors and meow, meow, meow. Every single person on that list has paid thousands of dollars to publicity agents. Nobody is on that list without having a full-time publicist.
I was watching Hacks last night. The main character was complaining because she was being offered an award and she knew that she was only getting an award because the television channel she was working for had bought it. And she was like, this is some fake crap. And Rosie O'Donnell was on the episode and she said, well, maybe it's fake crap, but this is what we have to do to stay relevant in this society.
So how to get better input and feedback. Practicing on your own only gets you so far. You're a closed system. To improve further, you need outside input. There are two strategies. Seek critical feedback from peers and experts, and observe peers and experts at work. In comedy, when you start hosting for comics, it's really good for you to watch the headliners perform. You're going to pick up on stuff that they're good at and figure out how to incorporate it into your own set. As far as feedback, man, comedy is one of the most immediate feedbacks in the world. You get on stage, you say something. If they laugh, it was successful. If they don't laugh, it was not successful. It's brutal, but it's very, very practical. Something that comedians get envious of is musicians, because you can become a very good musician on your own. You're not on stage the first time you pick up a guitar the same way you are when you're doing comedy. And then taking feedback. Approach feedback with an open learning mindset. Your goal is to improve. Critical feedback may make you feel uncomfortable or be hard to hear, but if you ask for it, and you did because you want to improve, you do want to hear it. With luck, the feedback you get will be couched in positive terms. This should hold true, especially if you ask someone who cares about your improvement, who shares your goal for yourself, and is thus invested in you. Feedback as a gift is the hardest lesson that I have ever had to learn. But now that I truly believe have internalized it, it has only made me better at work, in comedy, getting feedback, asking for feedback, giving feedback. They're all incredibly important tools. You might spend 5 years growing in a way that nobody wants if you never, ever ask for feedback.
Another thing that I learned from the supercuts of hypnosis centers, we used to watch videos of my hypnosis sessions.
Brutal.
live record them. I mean, that one when the woman walked out, I remember sitting down with my boss watching it. And he said, I see where you lost her. So let's try this instead. Having a video of myself doing hypnosis terribly was really, really helpful to me. And then when I went to graduate school, we had the same setup because there was a free therapy center in graduate school. They would film all of our appointments. And so then I would have my professor go over the details with me of where I screwed up. And also I could watch my peers do their therapy appointments. It was incredibly helpful because I think it's one of those things where if you don't know, then you don't know. You don't have the skill.
When I was in college, I took a diving class. It was very brave of me because I had not done any diving. Perhaps I didn't understand that everybody else who was in the class would have been one of the better divers in their high school. One of the things we did was we watched our dives on video. Mine was really pretty bad. I remember that feeling of 1, I was the palest, softest bodied person on the diving team. 2, I was not a good diver. It was awful. It did show me how to improve. Everybody wants to do the art form, but nobody wants to go to the critique.
My son, I've asked him, do you want to play a sport? Do you want to do that? And he says, no, I don't want to do anything. When I've asked him about it, he says, because I don't want to be bad at it. Bro, that's 100% of how you get good at things is by starting out being really bad. Nobody just walks into a situation and is immediately very good at it.
That's a child's perspective. He thinks that there might be something that he's just born to do. He's going to be really good at. When you're endeavoring any art form, skill set, it's important to remember that every single person on earth who's doing it at an expert level was once an amateur.
That's how we got there. Again, from Malcolm Gladwell, success is a function of persistence and doggedness and the willingness to work hard for 22 minutes to make sense of something that most people would give up after 30 seconds. From Merriam-Webster, the word iteration, the action or process of repeating. That's what he talks about a lot in the book, is just doing the repetition of the experience. And I remember our father told me once when I was first learning to drive, and P.S., I was not very good at it. He said, when you have been on the road for 10 years, you will be at mastery level. You will be at the highest level of ability to drive. So I kept that with me. I thought, okay, 9 more years, and I might be as good as the average driver on the road.
Speaking of, I just took a 3-hour driving course online because I didn't know that in Oregon, the red light cameras are also speed cameras. Because in my defense, I made the red light, but I was going 55 miles per hour.
In my defense, I was breaking the law, but it was a different law that I was breaking.
They talk a lot about how new drivers have the most accidents and have the most fatalities just because they are not as good as more experienced drivers. A summation of the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, so you don't have to read the book. The story of success. Achievement is talent plus preparation. In Hollywood, they'll say, opportunity knocks, but you have to be prepared to answer the door. You need to have already taken the acting classes. You need to have already done the work to be ready for the opportunity. Before he could become an expert, someone had to give him the opportunity to learn how to be an expert.
Yeah.
That is just a hall of mirrors on expertise.
Before I become an expert, I have to learn how to be an expert. I'm not just going to be born with that. Unlike my son, who apparently can just walk into any room and do any skill.
Just try his hand at anything. Yeah, immediately great.
Most of us have to become experts. I remember I decided in college that I was going to take violin lessons, and I did it for about, I think, 2 years, maybe. My last lesson, my teacher was trying to find the notes for this piece. So I sang them to her. I said, it goes like this, na, 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 na. And she said, oh, so you do have an ear for music.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, I wasn't practicing regularly. I wasn't doing what Malcolm Gladwell says. I was practicing, but I wasn't practicing the way I should have been practicing. That was our last lesson. Because I never saw her again. Because I actually walked out of the appointment and I said, wow, so you've just been taking my money and just assuming that I have absolutely no skill or talent. That's great. That was probably a place where I should have grown. I chose not to in that moment. How to achieve mastery, 3 steps to becoming great at anything. The first step certainly seems the easiest, but it's often the harder than we realize. Before we do anything, we must decide what we are going to spend our time on. What skill or domain are we committing ourselves to master? We all have many interests and we are all capable of mastering many things, but putting in the time and effort to get truly good at any given skill takes a decision. We must choose that we want to master. There are many ways to come to this decision. It can be based on skills we deem lucrative in the future. It can be based on what we know we're good at, or even what we're interested in. So that was the disconnect for me. I didn't really make the decision that I wanted to have mastery. I just wanted to be automatically good without putting in the work.
Another hard thing about getting good at something is planning to work on it and planning what exactly you want to work on. Assume that this is not a fairy tale. You're not going to pick up a wand and become a magician or kiss a frog and find a prince to marry. Whatever you're going to do in life, you're going to need to work to get good at. When we were kids, you could draw a frog or a pirate or a little bear, and the language on the thing was you draw this thing and you send it in with your dollar, and it says, this is a drawing test to determine if you have the interests to become an artist. And I remember thinking, they don't mean interest, they mean talent. That's not what they meant at all. They meant interest. Are you going to focus on this? Are you going to put the time into learning it? Are you going to work at it? Because that's how you become great. We all have the fantasy that there's people in the world who've gotten really, really good at things without a lot of hard work. And it has never happened, not once. Here I have the 4 essential ingredients of expertise development by Joseph South. The greatest gift we can offer our youth is to help them become experts in becoming experts. Expertise develops faster when learners have direct access to authentic settings and tools. Learners are more engaged when there are real stakes, real consequences to their actions. Becoming an expert is as much about taking on a new identity as it is about mastering knowledge and skills. Entering a community of professionals as a legitimate participant, even though you are just a novice, accelerates this transformation. To gain expertise quickly, you need access to an expert who can provide individualized, timely, actionable feedback that challenges you to push toward higher levels of performance. They need to be able to both know what you are doing wrong and communicate to you how to address it. Additionally, you need a mentor, a cheerleader who believes in you and communicates their support to you when times are tough. An expert and a mentor can be the same person, but they don't have to be. This was also an important lesson in comedy. The people I was working with were not necessarily my mentors. They were just other people trying to make it in comedy. I was frequently looking for positive feedback or looking for support from someone who had no interest in providing that to me. It's not their job to do so just because they've been in it longer. You will find mentors, but it's not going to be everybody, and everybody's not going to give you great advice.
Because not everybody is interested in you being successful.
It is an exciting world in that you can learn the rudiments of almost every skill on YouTube. We are in a place where all human knowledge is available. Not since the establishment of libraries are we in a place where there is so much information available. Anybody can become reasonably good at anything that they put some time into. I think having someone to give you feedback and guidance is going to help you achieve your goals a lot faster. We were talking about competition earlier, and I think that that's a big part of people focusing in on skill development. When you are in competition, it's a very easy way to say, I'm getting better, I'm making improvements. I think that's what really drives us to compete more than I need to be the best crocheter in the world.
So Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
Thank you for bringing this topic. I think this is a great topic for the new year as we are looking at our lives and trying to figure out where we can improve. Everyone can improve. If you have something you want to do, start doing it. If you have something you want to do and you've always wanted to do it now. There's no reason to wait. Especially women who are like, well, I have to raise these kids and then I have to keep a house and I have to go back to school. If you have something you know you've always wanted to do, figure out a way to do it now. Learning, developing talents, developing expertise is one of the most fun things you can do with your brain and the most fun things you can do as a person. Laura, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
We are all learning machines. I think that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn and grow and improve in lots of different ways. With my career, my mentors have been people that I actually did therapy with. So I remember going to couples counseling every week and thinking, this is expensive, but it's free training, right?
That's a good perspective.
Because I learned so much about how to manage a couple, what to do when things were going bad, because it's a very difficult thing to wrangle a couple when things aren't going well. I remember in individual therapy, there's lots of techniques that she taught me that I now use in my practice. As a human, if you want to be, in my opinion, the best human, you have to always want to be able to learn, but also be willing to teach other people. I love teaching people about this world. I love training people. And that's why in the near future, I'm going to develop a hypnosis training format for therapists, because I really want therapists to have all the skills and stuff that I had to learn. because I think a lot of people go into hypnosis with very little training and they're pretty bad at it. And I don't think that's what's best for our clients. Let's learn something new. Let's develop our brains, because every time you develop your brain, I think you create more longevity in your life and more joy. And watching our mother, she's developing a lot of skills in her retirement community that she didn't have before. And I think it gives her joie de vivre. I think it's really important in our development as humans.
And she's going to start this cheerleading career that we've only just begun to see. She's going to take that act on the road.
Oh, yeah. I've seen her in action. I have video footage to prove it. The more that she cheers, the better off I think society will probably be. So, Virginia, if somebody wants to watch you learning the skill of comedy and developing it more and more every time you're on stage, how would they go about doing that?
You can see me improve at comedy by checking out my calendar on my website, www.bedinia.com. I also practice telling jokes on TikTok, also hooked to Bedinia. And you know what? I've been putting up reels on Instagram. That's also Bedinia. Laura, where can people find you if they're interested in becoming better at being therapy clients?
They can find me if they're in the state of Texas at lauraryan.org. That's a skill, my development of my TikTok account. Every year they'll say, at this time, 2 years ago, this was a TikTok you made.
You're like, that was hot garbage.
God, I'm speaking so slowly. I'm saying every 3 words. If you want to watch my TikTok account develop as I get better at it, you can find me at I Am Laura Ryan. If you're interested in our podcast, you can go to our Instagram page of My Sister's a Therapist Instagram. And if you want to go where all of our episodes are in one place and you don't have to download an app, you can go to mysistersatherapist.com. Virginia, if anyone wants to send us a letter or shoot us an email, how would they go about doing that?
If you have a compliment, show idea, or a question, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you have a business opportunity, an Arby's franchise you want people to invest in.
Not Arby's, they're terrible.
If you want to hire us to create publicity for your brand and authentic, relatable consumer feedback for such brands as Sunday Riley, Bitch and Sauce, Waterloo,
Liquid Death,
you can write us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, now is the part of the podcast where you will sometimes read a review or email someone has sent us. And if you would like to hear your comments read on this podcast, all you have to do is make a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or on Audible. Or you can just send it to us directly. What do you have to share this week?
I have an email from Omar. Hello, Virginia and Laura. The Order of Things was an awesome listen. I like how relatable and engaging you are in this episode. It feels like you're having a casual chat with me. Your authenticity and humor make it easy to connect with the topics you discuss. Seriously great episode. Thanks, Omar.
Thank you, Omar. We're glad you enjoyed our episode on birth order.
And I hope that you were able to listen to other episodes after that.
In closing, let us all hold hands and meditate on the statement of our one true leader, Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn, as he said, "We can make a baby."
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.